If you're watching this video, then you're probably thinking about how can I increase my salary, or more importantly, am I being paid fairly? And there's a lot of things to unpack there, but the first thing is gathering information. And one way we can do that is simply by asking our coworkers about their salary and compensation. Very difficult topic, but something we can manage in this video, and I'll guide you through it as well. Don't be afraid to ask about salary. It's legal, it's completely protected right, and you can check certain documentation and legislation here. Don't believe it just because your boss or your employee handbook tells you that you can't discuss salaries, because it is illegal to punish you for doing so. There are exceptions to the rule, but chances are you don't fall under those exceptions. If you work for a private company, there's a good chance you can talk about salaries legally. If you aren't sure if your industry can talk about salaries or your position, then be sure to consult a lawyer, right? They will know best in terms of can you talk about salary or not, and how protected that right is. One important thing to think about is, why are you asking about salary and compensation? It's very important to nail that down before we move any further, because you don't want to get jealous. You don't want to think more or less of your colleagues, right? They're still your colleagues at the end of the day. It's important to recognize that you are asking about compensation and salary for pay equity reasons. Are you being underpaid? If you are a minority or a woman, chances are you probably are being underpaid compared to your peers. It's better and within your best interest to find out what the salary bands are, how others are being paid, especially those who are within the same level as you. One hot take, or maybe not much of a hot take, is if you've never negotiated before, you're probably being underpaid. Right? The goal of any for-profit company is to pay you as little as possible so that they reduce costs and increase their profits. So by definition, they want to pay you as little as possible. That's very important to keep in mind when it comes to this. So you might not think you're being underpaid, but chances are, if you never negotiated, you probably are. And that's why it's so important to talk about salaries and compensations to see, am I actually being underpaid compared to my colleagues who are doing the same amount of work and are the same level as me? Throughout this conversation, you may also find out that you're one of the most highly paid employees if you do negotiate quite a bit. It really depends on where you fall here. So really, this video benefits those who don't negotiate, who don't really know where they stand when it comes to salaries. The main goal is to gather information, not to be jealous, right? It's to gather information so that you are equipped to talk about your own salary and compensation. When it comes to talking about salary and compensation, people don't really like talking about it. People are nervous about the subject. People don't like talking about money, so they definitely don't like talking about how much money they make. And it's really a flawed way of looking at it, because then you can't negotiate efficiently because you don't know where the top band or how much money you can basically ask for. When it comes to sharing salaries and compensations, be prepared to share your own. If you don't feel comfortable sharing your own salary and compensation, that's fine. It just means you should not go around asking other people about theirs. It might be difficult to just start talking to your colleagues about salary and compensation. So I would suggest going an easier route. If you have friends from college, if you have friends outside of work, ask them. They don't even need to be in the same industry as you. Just get some practice in to ask them, right? Figure out how much money they make and if they're comfortable with sharing that information and how to approach the topic. Because once you mess it up when it comes to your colleagues and your coworkers, it's very difficult to repair that relationship, right? It's not like they go away, right? You're going to see them the next day, right? It just comes down to good practice and getting in the right words, tone, and approach to it. Money, and especially salary and compensation, are very sensitive topics, and you don't want to mess it up. If you do decide to talk to people outside of work, right, outside of your current company, when it comes to money and how much they make, you should recognize that each company will have their own salary band. So maybe XYZ company is paid, 2 times more than your own company. Right? So don't feel bad if your friends make significantly more money. They're just at a different company with a different culture, different values, and a different amount of money in the bank for that company. And also realize that, hey, if you don't think you're being fairly compensated when it comes to an industry-wide standard, leave, right? That's always an option. When we talk about salaries, it's important to give people an out, right? If they don't want to talk about it, then that's fine. They don't want to talk about it. It's their right to privacy, right? They have the right to not talk about their compensation. If they choose not to, that's fine. I just keep in mind that you need to give them an out and you need to make them feel comfortable doing so. The most important thing is to respect that privacy. The way I would ask about compensation, if I was talking to a coworker, I would basically start out by saying, if you feel comfortable talking about salary and compensation, would you be open to sharing? And if you don't feel comfortable, that's completely fine, right? No pressure here. But if you do feel comfortable, I just want to figure out where I stand when it comes to pay equity and if we are all being paid fairly. People who understand that sharing salary and compensation is beneficial will understand that everyone should be sharing that information, just so we can figure out who's being underpaid and how to bring those people up, versus just keeping that information secret and everyone being underpaid, essentially, with a few key people winning at the top. But for those of us who don't want to share, that's fine. It's completely fine, and just be firm about it. And chances are they probably won't ask again. But if you do want to share, be open to it, right? There are many benefits and upsides to doing so. It also helps to say that the conversation is between you and them, right? You're not looking to share their information. You're not looking to post their salary information anywhere. It's more of just for your own reference. You won't use it to argue for your own salary increase, right? The whole point of it is that you know where you stand, and the more information you have, the better position you are in to negotiate. It's expected that sharing salary information is a two-way street. Don't just ask someone to share, but you decide yourself not to share, right? That's just not a good move and does not reflect well on your character. Fair warning, don't just ask the new person that just got hired what they're being paid, right? So statistically speaking, chances are the new person will be paid more than you, especially if you've been at your position for a while. Of course, you want to figure out how much they're being paid, right? Because that'll tell you where the salary band stands and if you are being paid less and unfairly. You have to build some sort of rapport, right? Just don't go asking people, hey, I want to know how much you make, right? That's going to be off-putting. It's going to make people feel a little bit nervous, right? It's not going to feel good. Some people might be okay with it, but it's always better to build some sort of coworker friendship before you go at it, right? The last thing is, it gets easier as you do it more often. It becomes more natural, right? People don't like talking about money. It's always going to be awkward, and that's fine. But the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, right? People should know how much others are being paid. And if you can be more upfront about it, the better it is, because that allows those who are being underpaid to sort of increase their salary, right? Negotiate better. What are you going to do with that information now? You know how much other people make, your colleagues, your coworkers, and some of them make more than you, some of them make less than you. Hopefully you're not at the very bottom. Whatever the case is, now you know. And you know that you can negotiate for more money. Right? If you're asking about salary, if you're asking about compensation, chances are you're not at the top of the band. Right? There's more room to wiggle. And even if you were at the top of the band, just remember that there's always going to be someone that's paid more than you. That's a fact. Unless you happen to be one of the wealthiest people in the world. Otherwise, it's a different story altogether. But since you're probably watching this video and you're probably not one of the wealthiest people in the world, there's someone paid more than you. So this is where you can sort of leverage the information and negotiate. You have to understand that no one is responsible for your salary and compensation except for you, right? Just because a new hire is being paid more than you, who's doing less work than you, and maybe in the same position as you, or maybe even a lower position, it's important to recognize that they are not responsible for your compensation. Right? They don't get to pick what their compensation is. Right? The company gave it to them. They negotiated. Maybe they didn't negotiate. That's entirely their own path. Your path is going to look different. Right? I'm going to say this again. Do not bring up your colleagues' salary information when you are negotiating with your manager or HR. It's not going to work. There's so many reasons why it would fail. And also, in a way, you are betraying the trust that your coworker gave to you when they share that information in private. Again, no hard feelings. If your coworker is being paid more than you, remember, it's an information gathering exercise to figure out where you stand in that salary band. Instead of mentioning your coworkers, focus on your own achievements and growth when it comes to negotiating. Or figure out where you improved. Since you know that there is room in the salary band to grow, you can understand that if you can show that you're improving, the company needs you, then they will pay you more. If you did all that, you've listed all of your accomplishments, you've shown them how you've grown the company over time, whether that's revenue, profit, cost, so on, however you improve those metrics. If you've shown them all that and still they refuse to give you a raise, well, if they refuse, remember, most places have an at-will employment contract. You can always leave. And if you leave, you can find a place that chances are going to pay you more. If the information that you gathered from your colleagues are correct, then that means that other places are probably offering that amount, if not more. Just find a different company, and chances are you'll be fairly compensated there. The top 3 things from this video would be, remember, you have the right to talk about your salary and compensation without being punished by your employer. And 2, make sure that the person you're talking about salary or compensation will feel comfortable with sharing, right? If they don't feel comfortable with sharing, that's completely fine. And 3, don't bring up someone's salary and compensation to negotiate. That's completely on you and your own responsibility. They trusted you with that information. Don't go betraying that trust. Finally, I hope that has equipped you with the knowledge and maybe some talking points when it comes to asking about salary and compensation. And hopefully now you can find out how much other people are being paid at your company, and you can negotiate for higher pay and more pay equality at your company. Good luck, and hopefully next time we chat, you have talked to your manager about a pay increase and you've gotten that pay increase. If not, feel free to find a job elsewhere, right? It always eventually does work out if you start that conversation about salary and compensation with your colleagues.